And like Brian, it's a great honour to be here in Prague and to talk about the Czech ecosystem. I work in the Ministry of Health, and I'm going to talk to you about the role of e-health in Ireland and the role of the ecosystem. I'll just start with some of the economic data for Ireland in recent years. The population of Ireland is 4.5 million people. It's about half of what you guys have in Czechoslovakia. I'm from Dublin, and Brian O'Connor is from Belfast in the north, and we're great friends, aren't we, Brian? The population of Ireland is growing, and as you can see from that, so in recent years, despite the economic meltdown, and it's hard to understate how serious the economic decline that we were facing. But in the last few years, you can see unemployment is growing, and the debt is beginning to go down as well. In terms of health spending, we haven't been able to increase our health spend in recent years because of the economic decline, but the economy is beginning to grow again. We are spending 18.4 billion a year, and that includes private sector health spend. So the Irish healthcare system is a complex one, and we have a mixture of public and private healthcare, and about half of the country has health insurance, and everybody else is on what we call medical card system. So that's like a public insurance system, and we're often found in the middle of a lot of EU indicators on health, and you can see it from there included in life expectancy in health. So in terms of the economy, a lot of the growth in the Irish economy in recent years is in the life sciences sector. And I suppose one of the things we did look at when we were developing the ecosystem and a strategy on e-health is there things we can learn from the health sector. And for a country that has a huge amount of investment in the life sciences sector, I felt that we weren't really learning from some of the efficiencies that companies like that know about. The main economic sectors in Ireland we are well known for alcoholic drinks and financial services, aircraft leasing. ICT is a huge part of the economy, and then the life sciences sector, including software, medtech, and pharmaceuticals. And in terms of the biggest, some of the really big names, it's not well known, but a lot of these devices are made in Ireland, and we're the 7th largest exporter of medtech in the world. And a lot of if you see there, the last figure, even 33 of the FDA approved drugs in the world are produced in Ireland. And the life sciences sector produces annual exports of 40 billion euros. So it's and we have 9 of the 10 biggest pharma companies in the world in Ireland. So, sorry, I think I've skipped ahead there. So it's a major policy of the government to attract in the life sciences sector, and they have it's been a major contribution to getting the economy back on track since 2008, and all of these there is a major drive to attract these companies. Many of them are American, and 50% of the life sciences sector investment actually is coming to Ireland. So a lot of them are attracted by the fact that other companies in their supply chain are already there. So just to talk about e-health in Ireland, we really only got started in 2013. The presidency was a major opportunity for Ireland to kind of put the economy forward and show what progress had been made since the big meltdown in 2009. And we used the e-Health Week in 2013 to launch a new strategy and a new approach to e-health. Like a lot of countries, there has been ICT projects in the public sector that went seriously wrong. And what we tried to do was to do a relaunch of some initiatives that had died because of a failure in either the business element of it or the ICT element of it. So what we did was we developed an e-health strategy, and that was approved by the government at the end of 2013. The work on the strategy was announced during the presidency. We drafted a Health Identifiers Act. That's a legislative basis to give everybody in the country a unique health ID. We also decided that the government's job action plan, which was part of the drive to get the economy back, that we would put e-health in there as an action, and that made sure that it had a visibility and it had wide-scale support. We appointed a Chief Information Officer for Health in late 2014 as well, and we got additional capital funding. We have, on top of the e-health strategy, we've also done a knowledge and information plan, which is the implementation aspects of the strategy on e-health. We have set up a dedicated entity called e-Health Ireland, and we have an advisory committee called the e-Health Ireland Advisory Committee. Also last year we launched an ecosystem, an e-health ecosystem, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So in 2013, when the presidency was being held, we decided that we needed a theme, particularly for e-Health Week, and the theme we chose, and we had a lot of consultation with colleagues in the Commission, and the previous year we had gone to a trip to the US, and I met Brian O'Connor and heard about his initiatives in Northern Ireland. So we used e-Health Week as a kind of a cross-border initiative, and we worked with the Commission, and there was a declaration at the end of the presidency, and the Taoiseach of the country, that's the Prime Minister of the country, did the close, and we announced a presidency declaration which essentially looked to the developments of e-health ecosystems as a way of moving the whole agenda on, and this is an extract from that. And this was a useful way of getting attention in the Department of Health and the other relevant agencies, particularly in our Health Services Executive, which is the organisation which delivers healthcare on the ground. So when we were developing the ecosystem approach and a strategy on e-health, we wanted to link e-health with the reform agenda that the government had at the time. So we wanted to have a wider policy background on e-health. And so we had to think about what an ecosystem would look like. It is important that every member state or every country, or if it's been done in a region, that an ecosystem must be closely linked to the health policy in that area. So what we have had to think about is what would the ecosystem approach, how would it work? And now that it's up and running, we have to think about where we go from here. So a lot of the challenges that we set out in the strategy, and that's a logo for it above, is how can e-health fit in with wider reform of our health systems. E-health on its own is of no use. It has to be linked to, as closely as it can with the policies that the ministry. And I suppose it is closely associated with a radical change in the delivery of healthcare, because it's very closely linked with policies on integrated care, and money follows the patients and other initiatives like that. And I suppose we would have a very strong view that information systems in healthcare are way behind other industries. So what we need to know is how can we use those new information environments to better effect for patient care. And we have also recognised, and we are trying increasingly with our colleagues in the finance area, to understand that it will require people, it will require additional staffing and resourcing. And there are huge challenges, and everyone is aware of what they are, but there are also massive opportunities as well. So one of the things I looked at when we were doing our strategy on e-health is how do you bring innovation? Healthcare, when we looked at it, it is very much based on a geographic location. It's very much based on a regional approach. And if you look at other industries like travel and communications and the media, they have gone through a huge amount of changes in recent years. And a lot of it, we are of the view that healthcare is kind of inward-looking in many cases, and it lacks an innovation approach. And we thought that an ecosystem could actually help us work out some of the issues by, making people think outside the box and adopting a more innovative way of thinking. So one of the reasons why we felt an ecosystem might help us is that healthcare is complex. Healthcare is a huge part of the economy. In Ireland, 20% nearly the budget goes on healthcare, or sorry, 40% should I say. There are multiple players in the Irish healthcare system. There's a huge private sector, and you have to try and integrate that with the public sector healthcare. It's quite obvious that when you are looking at complex healthcare issues, no one player can solve it all. If that was the case, we would not have any of the major issues like waiting lists and many of the budgets in our hospitals going over the top in terms of cost. It does require innovation, and in healthcare too, people very much just can get into silos, be it general practice or acute hospitals or mental health, and it's by joining up all of these players and looking at what the private sector and the public sector and what investors and private sector innovators can do for us that we might be able to solve many of the problems we have. So what we are trying to achieve is essentially that the ecosystem will help bring government, academia, industry and citizens to collaborate to bring change, positive change, and it's far beyond the scope of any one of the players can do. And this is Intel's view of the world. The interesting thing is when you start adopting an ecosystem mindset, you find an awful lot of other sectors of the economy, education and industry and stuff, have been doing this for years. It's kind of unique in healthcare that we haven't approached this kind of collaborative approach. I think there's kind of a patriarchal view in healthcare, and it's very much of doing things to people as opposed to doing it with them. So the Irish health ecosystem is a year old, but it's very important, I think, to think of it as one tool in the e-health strategy that you guys are thinking of doing. It's very important that it's used to actually drive the strategy itself. And the ecosystem that we have launched last year. It's a partnership between our Health Service Executive, the Ministry of Health, the Health Informatics Society of Ireland, and the European Connected Health Alliance. It's open to any parties who want to come along. We don't charge. We have meetings every 4 or 5 months, and we've had a very good attendance so far. And it's an evolving process, and we are slowly but surely developing the requisite links. So in thinking about the role of an ecosystem, what we have tried to do is to try to plan out what the various players in an ecosystem, and we would see the enterprise sector as very important. And there is also, probably more so in Europe than it is for us, because we only have a border with the north of Ireland. But we have very close linkage also with the authorities in the UK. And more we can see possible solutions, because in many instances they've thought about some of the issues that we're now trying to crack. We've also found that there is opportunities in terms of EU funding for cooperation on cross-border issues as well. So an ecosystem is a positive forum to actually develop some of those ideas and linkages. We have also, to drive the whole e-health agenda, we have reorganised ourselves within the Department of Health, the Ministry of Health, where I work, and we've set up a new unit to actually look at research development and health analytics. And an important part of that is the unit that I head up, which is information and e-health. But we have another section which is now working with enterprise and the academic sector for economic and health outcomes. Because one of the things the ecosystem has helped drive is that idea that what's good for health can often be very good for the economy. It's not a matter that we need to stop looking at healthcare systems as being a drain on the economy, because the healthcare system employs huge numbers of people, and as you can see in Ireland we have a lot of industry associated with it. So health, in fact, it's fairly obvious, but you have to think about it as well. It is a good driver for, and a healthy workforce is actually good for the taxpayer as well. So this was only started in the last few months, so keep in touch with me and I'll let you know how it's working out. So just to kind of summarize, for an ecosystem to work, the key important issues is it is about collaboration. So it's working across the health system, but it's more importantly, it's working within the health system. And a lot of the initiatives that have come out of our approach is actually getting the health system joined up, and there's also then the opportunity to engage with the enterprise sector. The clinical engagement is an absolutely it's a vital component of it, and it's not something that's easy to get right. So we have set up a Chief Clinical Information Officers group within the HSC, which is the delivery mechanism for our health service. And that's going to be a hugely valuable piece. If you're talking about electronic health records and the benefits, there's no point in a ministry official getting up, and it has to be a medic in many cases. And they have a huge agenda themselves. There's a lot of rivalries, but there's also a huge amount of understanding, particularly in the graduates coming out of the universities now, as to the benefits of ICT and e-health. It must be patient-focused. Like anything we do in healthcare, if the patient isn't at the centre of it, you will get people, institutional politics will actually always win out. So it's very important, particularly in developing an e-health strategy, that there is a patient-focused approach. And we've had a number of engagements, and we've had patient organisations come along, And you know, it's very interesting because a lot of issues begin to dominate the agenda in e-health, like privacy, and it's very interesting to get the patient's voice. Like in one instance where we had an ecosystem meeting, like some of the patient groups were saying, like, why aren't you doing this? We thought you were. I thought my medical information was available to any doctor who saw me. If they only knew what it was really like, I think there would be riots in the street. It's a huge opportunity for shared learning, and it is disruptive reform. Not everybody likes to see it like that, but we do need a revolution in healthcare in order to harness what e-health and ICT can bring. Just to, I suppose, on a negative note, what are the barriers that can come about with which can stop the positive development of e-health? A lot of healthcare workers don't see an industry role. They think they can solve all of the problems themselves. They don't think there's any role for outside people or forces, and it's just accepted that is the case. A lot of healthcare areas are reform overload. I mean, every year ministries of health, and our own one included, we come out with new initiatives and new ideas. And they all see I suppose a lot of these ideas by being developed by the bureaucrats in the ministries of finance just to save money, or in the Ministry for Health to get a few extra brownie points.
I beg your pardon. Let me just kindly mention the time, Mr. Conlon. Thank you very much.
I'll be finished shortly. And I suppose also the enterprise sector underestimates the complexity of health. They have a simplistic view of it. So I think the role of an ecosystem is really to get everyone in the one room and get them talking and solving a lot of the problems we have. I suppose it's too early to tell whether this approach is working, but so far the vital signs of the patient are beginning to improve, I think. So thank you for your time, and I'll answer any of the questions you have, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you very much.